this isn't like an in-depth analysis of what postmodern theory is. I'm just answering a question because I feel it needs to be answered because, it does need to be answered. So here we go.
Never felt like this would need to be said, but, well, I'm here now, so I might as well say it. There has been, since the dawn of the inception of this word, since the very beginning of its existence, a massive confusion surrounding it. People think that something as simple as the term postmodernism is really complicated, that you must be really pretentious and full of yourself and shallow but pretending to be deep to use it, and everything that surrounds it in the literary, psychological, and sociological spheres. But actually, it's incredibly simple, and it's a shame that this word is so misunderstood, that there are so many misconceptions and poor definitions surrounding it, because it's actually very useful. I mean, in everyday life, we should be really using the term postmodernism and postmodernity normally, regularly, because these are actually very helpful terms. So here's the thing, postmodernism is exactly as it sounds, precisely as the name implies. It is a critique of modernity and the ideology which defends modernity, the present, modernism, while also a critique of the reactionary period of humanity, all that which came before modernity. So it is, in one sense, past the point of modernity. It's for the future, post-modernism. Now, postmodernism is a kind of anti-modernism. It is opposed to the present and opposed to the ideology that is modernism and anyone who defends the status quo, but at the same time, it is post. It is not pre-modernism. You get it. It is not, let's go back to, in political terms, when we're talking about this term in a political sense, the reactionary, feudal, medieval, monarchistic, racially homogenous time period, where we would romanticize saving princesses from dragons and castles. I mean, dragons didn't really exist at the time, but you get my idea, right? Like that sort of romantic image that reactionaries promote, but postmodernists disagree with. They do not like the past, and they don't like the past for the same reasons they don't like the present, or, similar reasons anyway. The future is actually what they want. So when we're talking about postmodernism in a political sense, we're talking about postmodernity, a period after modernity in which the problems of the world today have vanished. So this appeals to both the far-left radicals, such as communists and anarchists and socialists and intersectional feminists and people who want to do away with patriarchy and capitalism and the state and, so on. They want a post-modernity because all these problems are present today, but it also largely appeals to fascists who are a kind of alternative modernists. They want an alternative modernism. They're postmodernists, you know what I mean? They did not like at all, especially the fascists in Italy, including Benito Mussolini, the old times, the monarchist, feudal, you get my idea, sort of times. This is why fascism sought to create something new. It sought a national rebirth. It didn't seek to take us back to the past, a past nobody should ever appreciate, a past that was very dark and very depraved, as with the present, that is not worthy of celebration. See, the right actually get this. This is why any fascist society is trying to do something different. It's not simply trying to take us back a few hundred years, prior to the Enlightenment, which is what kicked off modernity. So, you could say that the left-wing postmodernists actually support many of the ideals and ideas, including those implemented by the Enlightenment, but are still very critical of it to the point where they need a new society. They need rebirth. They need something different. They need something alternative. Clearly, they are opposed to that liberalism which wants to keep us in the present. Hence why president after president and prime minister after prime minister are being elected who have virtually the same policies and opinions. And they don't want that because they're revolutionaries. They want genuine, realistic change, making everyday life a different experience from what we experience in the present. So yes, postmodernism is a political phenomenon, but it's not just a political thing. Although you could say that everything is political, but that's a whole different barrel to open. Postmodernism exists in literature. It exists in film. It exists in video games. Postmodernism just refers to a critique of any sort of media or entertainment or formula, whatever exists, whatever social structure is present, from a futuristic perspective. It is critiquing the modern form certain things take place in. It is critiquing the very, how do we say, status a certain form of media persists by. So, wanting to shake things up, but not going back to the past. Postmodernism critiques film, so we're talking about film just for now, for instance, in such a way as to not want to redo the flaws that were present in old-time films, wanting more advanced films, wanting films to move past what is holding them back in the present, in the 21st century. And we're not just talking about modernity, as in life after the Enlightenment in the Western world. We're talking about just any form of things that are in their present state, which are to some extent or another problematic. Sometimes politically, sometimes just in terms of their design. You want to improve them. So let me give you a good example of a postmodern film. And this film is being talked about endlessly in terms of its postmodern status, Pulp Fiction. So you, of course, know Pulp Fiction. Quentin Tarantino's masterpiece. He has many masterpieces. I love so many of these films. But that is a postmodern film. In that, at the time it was modern, yes. 1990s film. It was a film that wanted to do something differently from how films at the time and today presently do things, which is what helps it stand out as unique. So there are two major things in the film that set it apart from other crime dramas, or, other thrillers or other films that involve gang violence and, wars between different, little street gangs or whatever you want to call it. It follows a bunch of criminals. The first thing is that it's told in a different alternative order, the story. It's not told in chronological order, meaning from beginning to end. No, it's told at separate parts. See, the film doesn't open up with how things start at the very past. It is showing scene after scene that take place at different times in order to create what Quentin Tarantino, I presume, perceives to be the best way of telling the story. He wants certain characters, even if they've died in the future, in what is in the film, the future, he still wants to see them present. He still wants us, the audience, to look at these characters and say, all right, yeah, this guy died before, but he should be present for the last scene. He's important. You get my drift. And so it's told in this different order that's making us feel like it's not meant to be a heroic story. It's meant to be like real life in the sense that, yes, even though there is a beginning and end to our lives, sure, the reality is that we don't see the full story of everybody's lives. For example, one of the main characters killed by Bruce Willis, he didn't see the story that Bruce Willis went through. He didn't know his journey. That is realistic. I mean, you know what I mean? If we were to have it where the situation took place after, after we've already learned about this guy named Bruce Willis, we already learned about, the character who was just killed. I mean, it'd be a completely different story here. What Pulp Fiction was doing was telling things out of order, not necessarily just to confuse you. It's not that confusing. You can put it in correct order. I already know the correct order. But the reason it was actually done was because it is showing that realism of, you don't know who Bruce Willis is, you don't know who all these people are. Sometimes you just stumble upon them at a different time, and they die, or whatever, I don't know. Something similar to that. That's what I mean by postmodern film. But the second thought about what makes it different, this is why it's called postmodern, is because the film doesn't really have any heroes. It just has anti-heroes, or anti-villains, or antagonists. It doesn't have, good people you should look up to. It has people who do messed up things. They kill quite a lot of people. They work for someone who, tries to kill someone. Every single person in this film is not like a hero. It's postmodern in that sense. It is taking, the black and white morality that we're so used to, especially in cinemas, and it's flipping that on its head. These characters who are pretty immoral, I must say. I mean, I don't doubt Tarantino would deny that. Happen to be the protagonists, not heroes, but protagonists. And they happen to be very likable and funny and upbeat. And, villains or not, they have personalities. They have things that make them human. This is what postmodernism is in film. postmodernism can apply to anything. This is what I mean by, like, we just should use this in our normal day-to-day vocabulary. You might know about, like, just talking about postmodernism in music. You might know about how there is this music genre called punk rock, and that, kind of soon developed into hardcore punk. And then there was this postmodern offshoots that came, known as post-punk and post-hardcore, that weren't trying to make punk or hardcore more like where they began, with garage rock, or, anything similar to that, but instead making them new, taking them to the future, and not going back to the past. These are, in a sense, postmodern music genres, post-hardcore and post-punk. But anyway, hopefully I've given you somewhat decent comprehension of this. It's really not that hard. Now, I know postmodernism refers to many things. In philosophy, it has a bunch of philosophers and metaphysicians associated with it naturally, but that there is just a simple version of it. Because whenever we're talking about something in postmodernism, we're talking about something that is a critique of modernism, that is also a critique of anything that precedes modernism, that is before it. And that's really simple. And that's why postmodernism is a very useful, very helpful term, and why you should use it.